just a little bit, but a lot better, advancing AmericanFreedom.com. Of course, Joel Griffith, he's a senior fellow over there. You've seen him on Fox News, Fox Business News, Bloomberg, C-SPAN, and MSNBC, also Wall Street Journal, other publications as well. Joel, good morning to you. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning. Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. I'll have to tell you that the acronym was foreign to me because I hadn't heard it in such a long time, but Memorandum of Understanding. We can talk about that and a bigger understanding, but one of the things is a lot of people seem to be getting ahead of this story. We're now getting a little bit more details as to what might be in this memorandum. Your thoughts, and you've looked at this.
Sure. Well, a memorandum of understanding is typically a pre-agreement. A lot of companies will enter into this when they're trying to sketch out negotiations for a merger or acquisition, for instance.
Perfect.
In this instance, it's a bit different. This is a memorandum of understanding of what the future agreement might look like. But there's a lot of action that occurs immediately after signing this MOU, which is quite unusual. Now, the copy that I'm working off of is the one that's been circulated in the media. CNN has circulated it, Bloomberg, a number of Mideast media entities, and a research fellow over at the Hudson Institute. And so I'm basing my analysis off of these 14 points. And of interesting note, Vice President Vance has alluded to this MOU, and what he said seems to align with the document that I have in my hands that's been circulated as well.
Okay.
And what I find most problematic about this is that from day one of this MOU, even before the final agreement is reached, that Iran is going to be benefiting from a lifting of the sanctions, a waiver of the sanctions. And this is very important because right now, even though Iran, even with the sanctions regime that was in place, was able to export some oil was sneaking through. If the sanctions are lifted, they're going to be able to basically double their oil export numbers. That's going to bring in around $3 billion a month through the regime. And I know here in the United States, with a $40 trillion economy, $3 billion a month doesn't sound like much. But you got to look at Iran. The Iran total government spending, military and everything else, is roughly $5 billion per month. So this oil revenue is equal to half of the monthly spending that Iran goes through. And, of course, a lot of that spending goes to terrorist activity. So that's the first concern of this. But the second big concern is that as this MOU goes into force, even before we actually negotiate the nuclear situation, is an unfreezing of up to $100 billion worth of Iranian assets. That's equal to 2 years' worth of Iran government funding. And then thirdly, and this is deeply problematic as well, $300 billion worth of investment into Iran is promised. And I know the administration keeps saying, well, this isn't American taxpayer dollars. But that's irrelevant. What's relevant is that this $300 billion will flow to the Iranian regime. And once again, $300 billion in our country might not sound like a lot, but the entire Iranian economy is only about $500 billion a year. This would be equivalent to nearly a $20 trillion investment burst in the United States. This is unacceptable. And I know some are saying, well, we did this with the Marshall Plan after World War II. But remember, World War II, we saw an unconditional, complete surrender of the Nazi regime. We saw that regime completely uprooted and the government of Germany replaced with one that was friendly and has remained friendly to us in the United States and our allies. This is nothing like the Marshall Plan because that evil regime still remains in place. And lastly, highly problematic with this memorandum of understanding, there is zero mention of the ultimate dismantling of the Iranian ballistic missiles capacity,
Correct.
Which threaten our allies and threaten Europe. There is zero commitment to fully to jettisoning at all the enriched uranium that Iran has, and there is zero mention at all of Iran ultimately stopping their funding of terrorist proxies across the world. And even with the Strait of Hormuz, the MOU says, yes, the Strait that ships will be able to cross the Strait of Hormuz safely. But there is zero promise that these ships are going to pass without having to pay a toll to the Iranian regime. Up until this war, ships were able to pass free and clear, no charge levied on these ships by anyone, United States, the other Arab countries, or Iran. If Iran is able to ultimately levy a toll on these ships, that would bring billions more into the coffers of this terrorist regime, which would be unacceptable.
Well, and Joel, 2 points that you've mentioned. It seems like Iran is now really grabbed onto that potential toll system. They look at that as a way to keep income coming in, and now they're looked at that. I'm also glad you brought up the fact that the lack of mention of ballistic missiles. Of course, someone you guys know very well, Mike Pence, was talking before the press club yesterday, and that was one of the things he brought up very distinctly as someone who understands foreign policy, that in no way, shape, or form does this original agreement pull back the proxies who already have been rearmed, and nor does it really help our ally Israel in this whole equation, because we're already hearing some scattering within the administration that they would like Israel to stop defending itself, basically, because Hezbollah is still launching missiles into their country. Where do you think this pressure is coming from, if this is in fact is the memorandum of understanding?
Well, this pressure it seems to come from a faction of the administration that was opposed to the Iran war from the start. Number two, I believe it's also coming from a number of those who would benefit greatly from business interests across Qatar, which is also sponsoring terror and has helped fund and host Hamas. So there's a lot of potential monetary interest involved here. You're absolutely right regarding Lebanon. The point one of this memorandum calls for an immediate and permanent end to the war on all fronts, including Lebanon. Well, as we know, Hezbollah is still deeply entrenched in Lebanon. Israel has a responsibility and a right to self-defense, and they've made great progress towards finally removing that threat, but it's still ongoing. And we can't ignore the fact that Hezbollah is directly linked to Iran. Hezbollah is stationed in Lebanon, continues to fire rockets into Israel, commit terror attacks. Hezbollah, of course, has also murdered American citizens. Well, Iran is their primary funder. $1 billion per year is flowing from Iran to Hezbollah, which, again, that's why it's important to keep these numbers in mind. $3 billion a month in sanctions relief. Well, that's 3 years' worth of Hezbollah funding. So for an MOU or any final agreement to try to tie the hands of Israel should be unacceptable. And that's not just because this would harm Israel. We got to remember, Israel and the United States and our Western allies, we share very similar enemies. And much of what Israel has done over its existence in modern times, of now over 70 years, they have been able to take the fight to the enemy in a very real physical way that would have cost us quite a bit more, both not just in terms of money, but in terms of our own men and women who would have had to put their lives on the line. Israel is doing that job for us. To tie the hands of our ally should be a non-starter.
Well, and that's a really good point. Once again, we're talking to Joel Griffith. We've posted his information up online. AdvancingAmericanFreedom.com is where you can get more information about Joel as well. You bring up another element. You know, as we get ready, what we are looking at is, if this is the actual memorandum of understanding, it means that we would move into what they're describing as a 60-day treaty period, where we would hopefully take what is written and now not written in this memorandum and get it into some kind of more legal document. I loved how you explained that at the beginning. I think one of the other factors too, help us understand that a little bit, Joel, but the other factor is, when you look at Lebanon, Hezbollah's influence there, there has been a massive rattling within the Lebanese people and the government who do not want to be tied to Hezbollah, who have been thankful that Israel is doing what it's doing. Lebanon wants to be free of the shackles of Hezbollah, and they've looked at these actions by both America and Israel as maybe the next step of them freeing their country as well. This agreement would set that back as well. But where do you see this memorandum of understanding going into a potential peace treaty, if it even makes that far?
Right, and that's a great point here. The pieces that are left to be negotiated are the very aspects which we went to war over, namely the Iranian nuclear program. And here's the problem. Let's say no final agreement is reached, and then we either allow Iran to continue its progress towards getting a nuclear bomb, or we go back to war. Well, in the interlude, this is very important. With this MOU, despite the fact that this is not a final agreement, despite the fact that this does not address the nuclear concerns, the nuclear weapons concerns, Iran is going to benefit immediately from both the sanctions relief and also the potential unfreezing of $100 billion worth of assets, which means that even if we do not enter a dangerous peace agreement with Iran and we do go back to war and try to finish the job, in the interlude, Iran stands to take in tens of billions of dollars, an amount that could be equivalent to 2 entire years' worth of Iranian government operations they could collect in just this 60-day period. That is very dangerous.
Yeah.
Zero money should be flowing to the regime, whether it's through their unfrozen assets or by them selling oil. Zero money should be flowing to the regime until they reach a true agreement with the United States and our allies, and until we take concrete steps to ensure that that enriched uranium is safely removed. Right now, that uranium is still there in Iran.
Yep.
It possibly could create several dozen nuclear weapons. And these are nuclear weapons that would be in the hand of a regime that is not rational. Because keep in mind, the regime in Iran is a theocratic regime that believes that there will be a 13th Imam that will come to power and that will lead a radical Islamist world to global domination. They're not rational actors. They believe that they can expedite that appearance and that power of that Imam by ushering into the world mass bloodshed.
Yeah.
So we cannot let irrational actors especially have access to such a weapon. And that's why it's important, too. We've heard some ambivalence now with the administration waffling about whether or not we can just dilute the enriched uranium. Well, that's also a red herring, because we think of enriched uranium, we know that we have to get to that 90% enriched threshold in order to have a nuclear weapon. And so, therefore, we presume that, 3.5%, 4%, that's not so dangerous. But remember, getting to that 3.5%, 4% enrichment level takes years. Getting from that 4% level upwards to the 90% level takes far less proportional amount of time.
Correct.
And that's why up until now, we said it's not just that they have to remove the highly enriched uranium. It's that they need to remove all of this enriched uranium, highly enriched or otherwise, and we have to be able to verify that they no longer have the centrifuges and those experimental facilities in which they could resort to doing this in the future. And to President Trump's credit, we made great progress in stunting that nuclear weapons program by bombing the 3 reactors and by entombing the centrifuge program underneath a pile of rubble. But if we leave the region, our military leaves, and we provide them with financing through their own oil sales, that will allow them over time to recover that uranium. This will put the problem in the future. And I don't mean to ramble here, but on this ballistic missile as well, even though the ballistic missiles are not yet armed with nuclear tips, although they could be, the threat with the ballistic missiles is that the defenses that Europe has and that Israel has and that our Arab allies have against ballistic missiles attacks, well, those missile defenses they can be overwhelmed. And the fear is that Iran could acquire such an immense quantity of ballistic missiles and ballistic missile launchers that they could release these en masse, and it would overwhelm the defense systems. And that would lead to mass. We're talking tens of thousands of civilian casualties. And what we saw during this recent war with Iran, when Iran did fire ballistic missiles into its neighbors and across over into Israel, I believe it was like 99% of those were successfully intercepted, and it did reduce the number of civilian casualties that we would have otherwise seen. But that's because Iran did not have the capacities yet to overwhelm the defense systems. So that's why it's very important that a real agreement includes Iran's ballistic missiles program.
Absolutely. Hey, Joel, can I carry over to the next segment? I have 3 questions for you I want to get to before I let your expertise go.
Sure thing.
Perfect. So what we'll do is take a real quick break. We'll be back with Joel Griffith, because remember, we advancingamericanfreedom.com. We posted his information up online as well. Let's take a quick break. Let's come back with Joel, and we'll get to those 3 questions. Welcome back, of course, advancingamericanfreedom.com. Check them out. Joel Griffith joins us as well. We post his information up online. Real quick, Joel, I loved the segment. I also love the fact that you brought up the ballistic missiles. What I find interesting is that many people forget that a mid-range ballistic missile did make it quite deep, close to European territory. Both European and American security experts stated they were unaware that capacity existed in Iran. So what else is in Iran as well? The one question I want to ask you is that when we look at certainly what is going on with Israel and the people inside of Iran, one of the things, and I understand this is a memorandum of understanding, many people are concerned that we seem to be abandoning the people that rose up inside of Iran that at points we encouraged. And also we seem to be really putting a strong ally like Israel in a corner. They've been, the yeoman's work and a lot of the intelligence is coming from them. And a lot of people feel that if we do that, that will create a rift that is one that we don't need at this moment.
No, you're very right. And even when it comes to the extent to which Iran had progressed on its nuclear weapons capacities, it was Israel who had embedded themselves into parts of the regime, was able to extract reams of documents now close to 10 years ago that show that throughout the entirety of the Obama peace agreement era that Iran was cheating. And that's what gave us the analysis that gave us concrete evidence that Iran indeed was perhaps just months away from developing a nuclear weapon. And with the rhetoric too, the president's rhetoric on this, despite the fact that he has been such a friend of Israel, just a few days ago, this is a quote from President Trump, Israel is fighting Hezbollah too long. Too many people are being killed. Bibi has to be more responsible with respect to Lebanon. I'm not happy with the way Israel has handled themselves with Lebanon with Hezbollah. Well, we're talking about with Israel, the IDF as the most moral fighting force in the world. Before they engage in military endeavors, they typically will drop leaflets across neighborhoods telling people you need to get out if you're a civilian. And the fact is, Hezbollah, along with Hamas, embeds itself in neighborhoods. I've been up to northern Israel and with binoculars looked over to the hills where Hezbollah has these neighborhoods, and you'll see these beautiful homes. But these beautiful homes are all connected by intricate tunnels so that when Hezbollah needs to be there, when they think they need to be there, they station themselves in these homes. They have weapons facilities underneath, and they are able to launch rockets directly into the neighborhoods, the villages, the farmland beneath those hillsides. And that's why these attacks by Israel, they do occur in neighborhoods sometimes, but they give a warning to civilians to leave. But this is because Hezbollah has embedded themselves in this area. And in the same day that President Trump made those remarks about Israel, the same 24-hour period, he's had this to say about the Iranian leadership. The current Iranian leadership are very rational people. They are nice to deal with. They are strong and smart people. They are not radicalized, and they are looking to help the country. This is a direct quote from the President of the United States. That type of rhetoric, it's, of course, untrue, and it's appalling. We know that the regime in place in Iran, it has not changed. It's the same regime. And we also know that the new leaders of that regime are even more hard-line in their actions and in their rhetoric than the past. And they're not nice people. No. They have executed more than 40,000 people this year, people that rose up demanding an end to the regime. And just this past week, they executed more of those leaders in Iran that were bravely standing up of the regime. These are not nice people. They might be smart, and they've shown they're very smart in the negotiation, but they're not nice people. They certainly are radicalized, and we need to say so.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up too. And I shook my head a couple times like that. And of course, I watch foreign news services. I like I-24 from Israel, and they were just showing Tehran as they were talking about this agreement. And the Death to America signs were still up, and the missiles that are not working missiles, but they are pointed towards the U.S. and Israel as a symbol for the people to remember that who their enemies are. It'll be quite fascinating. Hey, Joel, we've come to the end of the segment, but I will give you the final thought. Great stuff this morning. Greatly appreciate it. We'll post your stuff up online, but a final thought from you.
Final thought is any agreement with Iran needs to include four things: a full dismantling of their nuclear program, including all of the enriched uranium, a full dismantling of their ballistic missile program, toll-free passage through the Strait of Hormuz, and a verifiable end to the terrorist proxy funding by the Iranian terrorist regime.
That's completely logical. Can we get you on the team to negotiate that? Because that's exactly what it is. Joe, thank you very much. Great stuff. We look forward to chatting with you again.
Thank you.
Outstanding. Once again, we'll post this up